Ready to go? Like everybody to stand, please, and join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. And first thing we're going to talk about is our agenda. I would look to Tabitha, and I would say, do we have anything to add? She says no. Anything that we need to add from the board or subtract?
Not I, Mr. Chair.
Hearing none, I would look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Our next item is our consent agenda. I would look to the board. I would ask anyone from the board if there's any item on our consent agenda that we would like pulled for further discussion. If I do not hear anything, I would look for a
Move to
motion.
approve, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion to approve and a second. Discussion? And there would be no further discussion because we didn't pull anything. This will be a roll call vote. Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine.
Aye.
Lemire.
Aye.
Casper.
Aye.
And myself, Commissioner Jelinski, is an aye vote. That motion passes. We'll move on to item number 5. Item number 5 is related directly to the sheriff's office. I believe we're going to talk about the jail for just a little bit. I see the chief is here this morning. Morning, chief.
Morning.
And you brought Tony along.
Morning.
Morning, Tony. And gentlemen, I would just simply ask, pull your microphones down in front of you so everyone can hear you, and I would ask to just take off. You're on.
Well, we're asking permission to fill a vacant full-time correctional officer position. We had a member that put in his resignation, so we're just asking to fill that.
I'll
And
make a motion for more discussion.
motion for more discussion?
Second.
Got a second, and for more discussion.
If I may, Mr. Chair, again, this was, boy, how time flies. Was it a week or 2 weeks ago you brought this to us, or the sheriff did? And again, it's about the contract. Again, we had a great discussion about this, is that bring in from Beltrami County, correct? And maybe,
This is to hire a.
This is, this is,
I'm sorry, I'm one
That's
off.
all right.
Oh,
You're one
well,
off, that's all.
I'm one off.
they had a resignation up in the jail.
Oh,
Mr. Chair, I'm good with the hiring. They're gonna need the extra help the way it is with the Beltrami inmates, and it's a vacancy that needs to
Not a
be
doubt,
filled.
and I believe you're just bringing that more for
It's
for
been-
information purposes as much as anything. Is that not
Correct. It's
Yeah.
posted externally for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
right.
and I appreciate you bringing it to the board for our information, so I do thank you for that. And I will let you continue.
That's all I have.
Did we not want to talk about the jail portion or not?
Oh, I guess
Mr.
I
Chair, that-
wasn't aware, wasn't that
That
just
was
passed?
part of the consent
That was
agenda.
part of the.
Oh,
consent
I'm
agenda.
sorry. I
hey, let's
apologize.
start this whole meeting over.
Let's start from scratch. Where are we at again here now? I've still got a little bit of the consent agenda on my screen, and that's why I said
Gotcha.
that. Sorry about that. Gentlemen, thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you.
All right.
Discussion regarding the, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, no, go ahead, Tony.
Oh, if you're gonna, yeah, the contract regarding Beltrami.
I'm a week or two off of that one, that's what it was.
Okay. Any issues with that then, as far as going forward with that?
Yeah, Commissioner
Mr.
Casper.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, separate issue. I was just going to ask you, where are we at on the body scanner? I know there was talk, the sheriff was in here and had some discussion. I was just wondering if there's any movement there.
Some, and I've been in communication with admin about that as well last week, and I was sick yesterday, so I don't
Okay.
have much more to update you with, but it's still in progress,
Okay,
still moving forward.
thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
And gentlemen, I'm just going to ask you to stick around for 1 second. I have to
Sure.
look to the administrator for a second for just a ruling, if you will. Do we need to have a motion to replace a full-time employee up in the jail?
So, Mr. Chair, there's two points or two answers to this question. First off, in the sheriff's office, based on state statute, there's not even a requirement to come before the board at all.
Yep, that's
So when
correct.
the sheriff or chief deputy come before the board, it's out of courtesy to maintain awareness of the staffing of the jail, and to ensure that they have who they need. And so the replacement of an already approved position really is a courtesy, so thank you, Chief Deputy. As far as accounting goes, our policy states that the board authorizes the hiring of employees. So typically, again, not sheriff's office, when a department comes forward to ask for backfill, there's no motion or second, it's just receiving the board input. If there's a concern, then we take it back off and further staff and then bring back formal. That is to backfill an already approved position. If it is a new position, it's an entirely different process.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And gentlemen, that's all I've got.
Thank you.
One other thing before we go, is this gonna get voted on today as far as the contract?
It's already
or-
done, Tony.
Did.
It's done?
Done.
Okay. Then I
Done.
need someone's signature on here.
Yep,
You take care of
that'll
that now
just-
or later? Now?
We'll get it afterwards, Tony.
Afterwards? Okay.
If you've got that, you want to leave it with Tabitha,
Sure.
that's fine. Thank you, Tony. Thanks, Chief.
Gentlemen?
Keep up the good work.
All right, let's see if we can kick into second gear slowly. Health and Human Services.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Good morning, Brad.
Good morning, Brad.
Good morning, ladies. Please, I would ask that you pull your microphone down in front of you, and let's all introduce ourselves, and what are we here for today?
We'll start on that end.
Katie Canetto.
Hello.
Karen Struski.
Cindy Bacon.
Brad Vold. We are here today to talk about unwinding of medical assistance. So as we know, during the pandemic, individuals who were on medical assistance did not need to renew their coverage and could just be added. So the federal government in their last budget took that out of the pandemic and now has moved for states to renew MA applications. So this is something you all could get phone calls on, especially since people may end up at a pharmacy and not realize their coverage has ended because they didn't notify us, or just a wide array of things that could happen as a result of this. So we're here to talk a little bit about what activities and actions were taken to hopefully make it a smooth transition and what it might look like for financial assistance. So I'll turn it over to Karen and Cindy.
So the PowerPoint there on page 2, we're just letting you know where we've advertised that they need to inform us, because being it's been a couple of years, we might not have a current address on file, and that'll be part of the reason they would be closing, simply because we can't get in touch with them. So we've put it on the county website, we've put it on Facebook, we put links out there for them so they could do electronic updates if they wish. That's pretty much it for the notification. I think, did we put anything in the shop, or the record?
Not that I know of.
Okay, we had talked about it, so we maybe need to do that as well. Put some information in there as to be sure to contact your county worker and notify them of any updates.
Yep.
Okay.
These two want to go on the radio to talk about this, so that's the goal.
Commissioner Blaine, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad, Cindy, so how many people are we talking about that could be affected by this in the county? And/or, well, I'll let you answer that question first.
It is coming in the PowerPoint to give you a sense of what it might look like on a month-to-month and an overall basis.
Okay, then we'll wait.
Okay. The next slide just talks about the disenrollment estimates for for national, but we're expecting probably the same amount, the 30 to 50% that are going to end up disenrolling and having most likely to reapply. And Karen, I'll turn it over to you with the healthcare renewal piece, if you want to go over
Okay.
that.
I can. Healthcare renewals are starting again. Do you want to go to the timeline renewal? Yeah, there we go. Renewals training plan. In March, which is this month, they are going to start mailing the pre-renewal notices. Everyone on assistance, medical assistance, or the Met system, Minnesota Care, will get a pre-renewal notice. So they're starting to inform people, hey, after 3 years, we're going to start doing renewals. April, they'll send out renewals, MA renewals on the Met system. May, they'll send out the MA per-renewal notices, and they'll send out all the medical assistance on Maxis renewals for the cases. In May, they'll send them out, they're due in June, we'll start doing renewals on Maxis in July. So, as you can see, the months just continue. So July basically is our first month that the renewals will start, that people can actually start getting closed off of assistance, July of this year. So for our workers, what it means is we haven't done them for 3 years, so there's lots of training, lots of refresher courses. As you can see, the state's given us some adults and disabled MA, families MA, MA EPD program, Medicare savings program, MA burials, cost-effective health insurance, spend-down asset verification system. These are all trainings to refresh our workers, and some workers haven't done renewals. Some of them are new to the medical assistance program, so it will be a busy time for us. And then, as you can see, now this is your question as to how many people will be affected. Medical assistance renewals, it gives you kind of an idea of how many we're going to do per month in July, August, September, October, November, and December. And then the MA renewals, Maxis cases, we have 1,712 cases. Now that's not people, those are cases. There could be one person on, there could be two people, there could be families on. So if you take that 1,712 on Maxis, we have to do those reviews every 6 months. So that's how we come up with the 285 reviews monthly. You take that 1712 times 2 and then divide it by 12. That's an average of how many reviews we'll be doing per month.
And then the METS case numbers, you can see the cases there, 3,378. And I know when we initially had chatted with Commissioner Casper, we had told him about the amount of the population in Morrison County that is on some type of medical assistance, and that's almost 1/4 of the population of the county that is on either MA or Minnesota Care. And as Karen mentioned with this case size, when it comes to METs, most cases do contain more than one person. They're generally households with kids. The Maxis cases tend, because they're disabled and elderly and stuff, tend to be more just one person per. But I wanted to go back to one thing Karen had mentioned too with the pre-renewals, them being notified via mail with those. Another benefit, the clients that receive them will actually be told the paperwork's coming, you've got to get it in or you're going to lose it. But for those that don't receive it, where those addresses aren't current, it'll come back to us at the county, so then we know we need to pursue that client and get the current information so we actually can get them their paperwork.
Just a couple of other strategies that the state and federal government is allowing. So some of these folks might have had an increase in assets while on MA, and of course there's asset limits. So they are providing extra time to reduce assets. So if somebody maybe bought another car or, for whatever reason might have had a life insurance policy from a spouse or a child, they are going to allow some flexibility to reduce assets in this process. And I think they are going to also allow some flexibility with immediately closing cases for those that don't get back to us. Because again, the unintended consequences of this or what could happen, it could affect somebody's nursing home stay or foster care stay or their ability to get prescriptions, just a wide array of things that could happen for individuals who may not now be eligible for medical assistance. So it is a significant undertaking across the state and across the nation trying to get these renewals in order, and then it will just continue to go as it used to pre-pandemic.
So let me ask a question, if I may. And this is just kind of a smart aleck question. So I apologize for this ahead of time.
It's okay.
Do you have anything else that you're going to do in the meantime, besides what you're telling us about today? Because this is more than a full-time job. This is a big deal. But I mean, it's a big deal that has to be done, and that will be done by staff, and I get that very clearly. But you still will have other things to do
Oh,
besides
yes.
this.
It-
And that's my point,
Yeah,
more than anything. is
it
that-
will definitely will keep us hopping.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I wanted to touch base on, just for 1 second, you have lots of trainings that you're going to do. And Karen, you said it, and I wholeheartedly agree, that due to turnover, be it what it might be, is that there might be many people that have never dealt with anything like this on staff here in the government center. Are-
Sorry to interrupt, but not really for staff. We only have like 1 or 2 people that haven't been through that
Okay.
process previously.
Okay. But 1 or 2 is the same because they're part of the organization that are doing this. My question is that the half a dozen, 10, 12 things that you have listed down here, are you going to be able to do that remotely for training, or is there going to be, go to the cities to do this?
No,
How do we
it's
expect
all
to do that?
online.
It
It's all
is, okay.
online training, yeah.
Okay, that was pretty much it. Commissioner Blaine, you've been waiting.
No,
Go ahead.
no, I'm totally fine. I'm a little more relieved in the communication here that there will be outreach done by the state or by the insurance companies to those existing enrollees, that they will be having to re-enroll coming up. What we're going to have to deal with, not me, but obviously your department and your staff, are those people who may have moved or who don't get the, I didn't get the message kind of thing, that we've got to try and bring into the fold before they're ineligible, and then we got issues, correct?
Correct.
So, and then looking at that slide before, we're just about, just in that 5,100 case range with both of those programs. So, we are talking about affecting a lot of people out there. I like your strategy in informing the public on the, beforehand, and to watch for that notice and watch for, things are different, are going to be different, things are going to be required of you to stay within the program guidelines there too. And so we're not doing this, reactionary, we're being proactive about this. And I applaud you all and your staff for taking that action and that strategy. So I feel better about this, but I know that I can see where there will be some challenges and there will be some additional work here when we get into these summer months and with the timelines that are changing there too. So, Mr. Chair, thank you for that.
Sure. Further questions from the board, comments? Yes, Commissioner Wincher.
Question I have, again, it states that, you're gonna be sending out letters, contacting these people. There may not be somebody that's gonna be on the list or whatever. Is there a safety net for if you send me a letter and I don't get it or I don't respond? What happens to those people if once they don't renew? Can they get back on again in 3 months, 6 months?
They can
Or is there-
reapply.
They can reapply, but there's gonna be a time period where they may not have coverage too, so. if they-
Possibly.
So if I'm one of them and I didn't reapply, you know what I'm saying? So, and I have a medical whatever, in 2 months, I go into a doctor, I come and see one of you or whoever, that's probably not gonna be covered.
Well, your first question was, is there a safety net?
Correct.
Really, the only safety net is if we get that return mail.
Okay.
So then we know, okay, they have a different address, so then we start looking for other ways to possibly contact them. Do they have a case manager or social worker? Do they have a current address? But as far as if they do actually close and, have a medical issue, like you said, we can look back 3 months for retro eligibility. So even if they were to apply today, we can go back 3 months and give them coverage. So there really shouldn't be anyone that's stuck with a medical bill, because if they go in for a procedure, they're gonna find out
Right.
at that time they're not covered.
Good, Thank you for that.
Anything further from the board? Hearing nothing, I will look at the staff that you brought along with you today, Brad, and I will suggest what an honor it is for you to be here today, because today's Brad's last board meeting.
Well, I'll be here for planning next week.
Board meeting.
Oh, yes.
Last board meeting, my friend. And because it's your last board meeting, I want to, on record, if you will, not that I need to be, thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done for Morrison County, everything you've brought to Morrison County before, after, and I'm confident during and soon to be in your new career. Brad, thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for being here today, staff members, on Brad's last board.
I do have one more request.
Oh, one more thing. See, I'm just getting ahead of everything else. Go ahead.
But first, I would like to say thank you to the board. I appreciate the trust you've shown in me, but even more importantly, in our organization, because there are all good staff who work for us. This is just a few of them, but I can't thank you enough for the trust that you've provided me and our organization to do the work that we do and what you allow us to do for the citizens of Morrison County. Your jobs are very important, and I appreciate that, so.
So
But
regardless if you've got one more thing or not, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss this one.
But unfortunately, the health plans are taking some more of our staff. So we're losing a min-choice assessor, an intake worker, and an elderly case manager. So I'm looking for an authorization to fill those, replace those positions if we could, please.
And this is just simply replacing.
Simply replacing,
Sounds
correct.
good to me, Mr. Chair.
Move on. Board?
Yeah, are we losing these to independent contractors, or are they retiring? I'm hope that
Some are retiring. 2 of these are going to a health plan, and 1 is going to a hospital. So, yeah, it's, there is more competition out there these days, and so people have more flexibility.
Very true.
Absolutely. Brad, do you have anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Thank
you. We'll see you
Anything
next
further from the board?
As I told you, Brad, here 2 weeks ago, you are gonna be missed, so.
Thank you.
You, have a great new position or wherever you're going, so, thank you.
I filled some big shoes. Somebody will fill my shoes, so you guys do a great job in building a good working environment, and people do want to come and work here, so thank you.
And just to let you know, that you're on camera here, so next meeting, you're not.
You won't be.
Thank goodness.
Mr. Blaine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too would like to express my appreciation, Brad, for everything that you've done for the people of the county, for the residents of the county, and shows the size of heart that you have for the people of the county, and I think that speaks a lot to your character as a person. But I also want to say thank you to you for your leadership within the department and within the organization. And the true mark of that leadership is how it's emulated through the staff that's worked with you. And we feel good about the effects of your leadership because of what it's done to instill leadership within the ranks of those people that worked with you and under your leadership going forward. I think Morrison County benefits greatly from that and from those people. But you will be definitely missed, not only by the people within this organization, but by the residents of the county who you've changed a lot of people's lives out there. So thank you.
Thank you for the kind words, and I'm not leaving the county, so that is the benefit, so.
That's
We
huge.
wish you the best of luck, and I'll miss you more than Blaine will.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and again, it's been a great place to work, and again, just thank you for the trust within our organization, so.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes. Sorry about that. Commissioner Casper, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I will miss him more than Mr. Lemire and Mr. Blaine together. I have just known you a short time, and it has been nothing less than an honor. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. Thank you all very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Have a good day.
Have a wonderful day.
You.
God bless you guys.
Thank you.
Our next item of business on our agenda, moving right along, is Land Services. Miss Amy? Good morning.
All right. I have 3 items for you today. The first one is to consider the interim use permit for Carmen Goldsmith. If you recall, this is to establish a dog boarding and training kennel. This was recommended by the Planning Commission for approval with 4 conditions, and those were outside exercise of the dog shall occur between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. The outside exercise area for the dogs must be fenced. Up to 12 dogs may be kept within the home for boarding. Up to 20 total dogs may be kept on the premises for boarding after the detached kennel facility is operational, and the interim use permit shall sunset on August 31st, 2024. And Mr. Chair, the applicant is here if you have any questions for her.
Absolutely. First, I would look for a motion.
I'll make a motion for further discussion.
Second.
Motion for further discussion and a second. Further discussion.
I've been stewing on this for a few days, and I've received multiple phone calls from the neighbors in the area, which I'm not the expert of the neighborhood, but the people that live there are experts of the neighborhood, and they had some concerns. They have concerns with the existing animals that this applicant already has. There's concerns about, there's peacocks on one person's roof, there's horses in someone else's barn, there's dogs in someone else's property. And I know she got rid of the goats, but there was a problem with the goats too. And I believe the burden is on the applicant and to prove that she can do the job that she's asking us to do, which is to open up a kennel for 12 dogs. And from what the neighbors are saying, they have great concerns, and I believe they have legitimate concerns. So to me, the question on number 2, the request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity, I would have to say that's a no. Also, she already has a CUP on this property for, is it called a campground, Amy? Or is
Yes.
it for a campground?
Yes.
With the ability for the campers, per se, to use the home for the kitchen, the bathroom, which will also be housing animals within that building. And I think that those two they don't mend well together. If it was a B&B with a campground, that makes sense. But a kennel with a campground doesn't make sense to me. I don't believe they're compatible. Also, I believe there's the mixture of animals and humans in one facility, it goes against the health, safety, and welfare of our Morrison County. So I believe I could easily say no to number 2, and I could easily say no to number 3 on the 5 questions. That's all I got, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anything further from the board? Commissioner Wincher?
If I could ask the applicant. a
And
question.
you certainly can.
The question I have, and Commissioner Lemire brought up a great point.
Carmen? If you want to come up, you certainly
Oh,
can.
oh, okay.
Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Lemire brought up a great point, what some of his constituents called him in his area. Again, I'm not familiar with the area, even though I've been driving through, but I don't live in your area. What guarantee, and if this is a fact, that your horses currently gotten out, what fact that, again, you have the peacocks, what is gonna make it that your dogs aren't gonna get out?
Sure. Just to explain a little bit more, I'm confused on the dog. I agree 100%. The horses have gotten out. The peacocks are somewhat free range, so they have left. It was an issue last summer, but I have not. Several years ago, I did not have any fencing for the dogs. And at that time, my dogs took off on 2 occasions. And one of the neighbor's dogs had also come to my property and bred one of my dogs. So at that point, I put up a 6-foot fence for them, and my dogs have not been loose at all. So I don't know if they're talking about back several years ago, or,
And that's very possible.
Yeah.
Again, I've raised horses all my life. Horses getting out is not a good thing.
no.
So what, again, a dog, again, you know, is a smaller animal. What guarantee does the county, does your neighbors have that these, you know, you're gonna have a good enough fence if you're allowing your horses to get out?
I guess all I can say is that I do have a good fence now, and I have had for years for the dogs.
How about the horses, though? Apparently, they've been getting out recently, within the last year?
Within the last year, they have. It's been a struggle with the land that I have, that's the outlying areas, because a lot of it's swampy. And so part of it's just keeping fences up, and I ended up restricting the fences and pulled it out of the woods some because there's a lot of deadfall, and so part of the problem has been eliminated, but I continue to work on it. I also used to have a stallion. He was tough on fences. I got rid of him.
But you can make fences to keep in animals. I don't care if it's horses, cattle, whatever. It sounds like you're not keeping your fence up for your horses. And again, like you said, your dogs are staying in, but if you have 12 or 20 dogs, that's gonna require a lot more keeping an eye on them, you know what I'm saying? So I haven't made up a decision what I wanna do here, but I was just trying to get an explanation from you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the area that the dogs will be in is already up. It's complete, that as far as for the 12 dogs. And if the building were able to be put up, that would be the same kind of fencing, which again is 6-foot chain link, and a small enough area, it's easy to maintain. I'm right there all the time, so and maybe part of it's just because I'm single and by myself, a horse fence is a lot harder to get up and stay up.
I'm good for now, Mr. Chair.
Further questions from the board? Comments? Mr. Casper?
Mr. Chair, I was just gonna ask, have you done something with the peacocks?
Yeah, I have a corn bin, and the top had blown off of that, and so I've replaced that.
Yeah, because peacocks are so noisy. They don't check what time it is before they start reporting.
Right. This is very true.
Thank you.
And I'm unsure whether, I'm not denying they were on somebody's roof, they could have been, but for the most part, they kind of have went back and forth between a neighbor that likes them visiting and my house, but they're expensive, so I don't want them lost either, and put the roof on.
Thank you.
Commissioner Blaine, do you have anything at this time?
I'd have maybe one question here. I'm not, I think what we're considering here is harboring of dogs here, and I know there's been discussion here about horses and birds and things like that, but the question I think before us has to do with allowing dogs, and we talked a little bit, or there's been a little bit of dialogue about fencing. My question, I guess, at this point in time is do you have adequate fencing to contain up to 20 total dogs on your premises? Is that, if we went there right now and all got in the bus and drove to your residence, could 20 dogs be there and be confined within the fences that are there right now?
Just to clarify, right now I'm asking for 12. The current fencing, yes, absolutely would easily hold that. the request is a kind of a two-tier request, so currently the dogs, there's an area in the house that they're kept, and then there's a full run outside the back of the house, which I submitted pictures, but I don't know that they can be pulled up now.
I don't have them here.
I had them at the planning meeting, but they're all 6-foot fences, and it's approximately 30 by 30 area. And then the second part would be to put up a building that's separate just for the dogs with an indoor park, as well as extending the run that's outside. So that would be the exact same type fencing, but it's all 6-foot chain link. I haven't had any issues with it whatsoever.
So in answer to my question, and so existing right now, there is secure fencing to securely have up to, we'll just say up to 12 dogs then at your residence right now.
Correct. And I guess the outside run area, it's my house that can't house 20 dogs. The outside area could, but I never put out that many dogs at a time anyways. Dogs don't get along that well. So I haven't had any issues with dogs getting along, but I am cautious and only put out usually 3 or 4 at a time that I know get along well and are gonna have fun playing together, or they take turns going out to the bathroom, and then they're back inside.
And so, so I fully understand where we're going with this. So now, so you've just mentioned that you're looking at constructing a detached building to house the dogs.
Correct.
A kennel building or what have you. Yeah, I see that's part of condition 3.
And that part is, sorry, is that okay?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
That part is somewhat dependent. The sunset that was recommended, I would need to get financing for this building. So a sunset date of 2024 kind of gets in the way of that, because it would probably be $100,000 that I'd be putting into it with a loan. I would need time to pay that back. So that is my wish, is to put up the extra building, which would probably be a 10-year loan, but
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, and I'm gonna look to Amy, to make sure I'm interpreting this correctly. So we have conditions that have been put forward by as recommendations by the Planning Commission.
Correct.
I need a little bit more clarity before we get to a vote on this, as far as, is there stipulations on the number of animals that may be, the timing of when those animals may be on this property in relation to an exterior building being built, and then we'll dive into the sunset date. Help me out here a little
And
bit.
Amy,
Chair?
please, you can answer that.
First,
You didn't want to?
I did forward the email Carmen had sent me with the photos. And there are some photos of the fencing, so if you want to take a peek at your monitor, Matt can go through those. And this is essentially the present conditions of the property and what's going on. To answer your question, Commissioner Blaine, the conditions, one of the conditions that was recommended for, from the Planning Commission was item 3, and that is up to 12 dogs may be kept within the home for boarding, and then up to 20 total dogs may be kept on the premises for boarding after the detached kennel facility is operational. So they were allowing up to 12 dogs until a separate facility was built, and then once that was operational, then she could move up to the 20 dogs total.
If I may help, Mr., what
Help
I'm,
me.
what I'm looking at here, and again, the question, the sunset, I understand that, and again, Commissioner Blaine may want to put more input on that. What I have with this 12 dogs and 20 dogs, does that include their personal owned dogs or not? And that's where I have so they, really, the applicant could say, I got 12 personal dogs, and then 12 more would be 24, correct?
Correct, so that had been some discussion at the hearing. So the way the condition is written, it is up to 12 dogs may be kept within the home for boarding. So that would mean not her dogs. And so she'd have up to 12 for boarding. Whatever she has for her personal animals would be above and beyond that.
And there's nothing to stop the applicant to say, well, these 12 are my own, and now I'm gonna board 12 more? Or can we say a total including personal dogs?
You certainly have the ability to do that if you'd like.
Okay, sorry about that, hope maybe.
No, that, and so that does give me some clarification on this, so that the increase in number of animals on there are contingent upon the fact that this building would be built.
Correct.
You know, so then that, which kind of goes into then condition number 4 of the sunset date. And so, I guess that was the other question that I have to ask was what was the reasoning behind an August 11th, or excuse me, an August 31st date of next year? So we're talking about 15, 16 months from now. Where did that date magically come from in that discussion by the planning commission, or the reasoning behind it? If you could share that with me,
Mr.
please.
Chair?
Excellent, please.
Couple of reasons. The first one was the planning commission wanted to, because there is an existing conditional use permit for a campground that must be acted on within 2 years of issuance, and it expires if that campground is not operational, or that use has not been undertaken by the end of August of this year, that CUP will become null and void. So it coincides with that. And then all
Of 2023.
of 2024. So the CUP was issued August 9th, 2022. She has 2 years to establish that use.
Okay.
So August 9th of 2024 is when that CUP, if not acted on, will become null and void. So they wanted all of those uses to kind of come together at the
Okay.
same time, because if that campground is going to be established, it will have been and will have been operational. So there would be more of an ability to see how those two things are operating together. And if that use is not taken up, then that expires. So that was one reason. The other one was, I think there was some consternation by the planning commission, by some members, that this was really a use that was compatible with the campground CUP and with the neighborhood, and wanted to give a small window to allow her to be able to essentially try the use on and be able to revisit it.
Okay. Makes sense.
Commissioner Casper?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Question to Amy. Amy, does it seem reasonable that there should be two separate sunsets? One for the conditional use permit for the campground and a separate one for the dog kennel?
Mr. Chair?
Please.
Conditional use permits don't have a sunset, so that is a
Okay.
land use right that's given to the land. The only time that becomes null and void is you have 2 years from issuance to undertake the use. Otherwise, then that permit essentially is no longer valid. If she establishes the campground use before April 9th, 2024, that's a land use right that runs with the land. There is no sunset. It runs with the land whether she owns it or not.
Okay.
The interim use permit, however, must have an end date. That by law, you must put an end date on that. And so, and that is why they corresponded the two, because they were really wanting to see how this campground shook out alongside the kennel.
Okay.
Further from the board at this time?
I've got one more question, Mr.
Please.
Chair. So my next question would be, let's say if request is granted today, if we get complaints from the neighbor, can it be revoked at any time?
It depends on what the complaint is. So if it regards one of the conditions that is placed on this and she's clearly in violation of that, there's remedies within the ordinance, and the most extreme one is revoking. Or if she's violating any of the performance standards we have in the ordinance for kennels. But if it's outside of that, we don't have an ability to compel compliance because it's not a standard we're holding her to.
Very good. Thank you.
My turn to make a little comment. I actually did teeny bit of homework, perhaps not as much as everybody else, or maybe a little more. Quite honestly, we're really not here today to talk about the horses or the birds. However, if I was a neighbor and I knew that this was in front of the county board today, I would want answers about the horses and the birds and the pigs and the sparrows and everything else that there might be that left Carmen's property and went onto a public roadway and/or on my property, if you will. And quite honestly, if the neighbor's horses, dogs, cats, whatever it might be, cattle, are on my property, I have an issue with that. I have a fence, and I need to know that you have a fence, so on and so forth. However, that's really not what's all in front of us today. What's in front of us today is a kennel application, if you will. It's not the fencing of the horses. It's not, are you keeping your birds on your property? That said, I would have a big issue with your birds flying onto my property, with your horses coming onto my property, with your dogs coming onto my property, as has been explained by the rest of the board already. So when we're talking about fencing, what are we talking about when you talk about a fenced area? Do you have currently today, do you have a cement run or do you have a grass run? I understand 6-foot-high fencing, I got that. Do you have a cement run?
What do you mean by cement?
When you put your dog out into this run, is it grass or is it cement?
Mr. Chair, if you take a peek at your monitor,
Yep.
that's what she's got.
And that
Grass and
tells me
P-rock.
that it is grass and rock. So unless you're there watching, and I've got dogs too, and anyone else that has dogs understands this, I turned around and that dog burrowed underneath that fence. To me, that's not adequate at all for a run. I'm just being upfront about it. They're gone. They'll dig underneath that and they're gone just that fast, because that's just the nature. That's also opinion. Dogs loose in the past, there's eventually been issues with your dogs being loose. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Your intent on how to prevent dogs from wandering out into the roadway, you've answered that, if you will. Eventually, sooner or later, you hope to be able to have 20 dogs on your property. And I'm very clear on that. And you're a very nice person. Tomorrow, you're not a very nice person after this is all said and done with and you have your permit. There is nothing stopping you from having 40 dogs on that property. Nothing. Because 20 of those dogs are your dogs. Even though I brought those dogs to you and they are my dogs, you now get a visit from Amy's agency, from Land Services, and you've got 40 dogs, and your neighbors know you've got 40 dogs, and they're not happy. Because this permit absolutely says 20. But you've got 40. Oh, that's no problem. Those other dogs are mine. And I'm looking at you straight in the face, and I know that's not your plan. I know very clearly it's not your plan. But the truth of the matter is that after you leave here today, you can have 40 dogs, you can have 60 dogs. If you have 60, those other 40 are your dogs, and there's nothing here that says, I need to figure out how you, or why you would have 40 dogs. But you do, and because your business all of a sudden went great guns, and you're making money at this, and you can house all these dogs, what guarantees do I have that that's not going to happen, that we're going to stay at 20 dogs? Your personal dogs and the grand total being 20. Although it really doesn't say the grand total being 20, because you can have as many personal dogs as you want to. It's a fine line, and it's just a comment that I want the rest of the board to hear at the same time also. And I'm saying that with the understanding that I'm supporting this kennel idea, but I'm also supporting the neighborhood that you live in at the same time. One of the issues brought up at the planning commission meeting was barking dogs. And in fact, I believe I heard the chair say, if you're gonna have a kennel, you're gonna have barking dogs. Life goes on. And I get it. I get it. Dogs bark. But what are you going to do to address barking dogs? My anticipation is that after hours, if you will, and I forgot already, it's right in front of me, after 6 p.m., my anticipation is you're going to have these dogs inside the shelter, if you will, inside your facility, inside your new building, and they're not going to be able to look outside to see little Johnny next door, if you will, playing. They might hear little Johnny, very clearly they might, and that might get the dogs to bark. And there is no way, as far as I know, that you're going to stop that. But if you have a way of addressing barking dogs, I would like to hear that, because I definitely heard that as an issue from the people that were here. Then my other thing was the outside times for your animals, for your dogs, was from 7:30 to 6. And my question to you, very boldly, is that truly doable, from 7:30 in the morning till 6? Or is it more doable from 5 a.m. till 10 p.m.? Or, I'm just asking the question. And understanding there is nothing here that is saying that you cannot, at 2 o'clock in the morning, that you cannot go outside with an animal. There's not one thing saying that here, nor could I imagine that to be a condition that a dog has to go outside, if that's the case. There's nothing that says that. But that's probably my bigger questions than anything. But I would have a problem with the peacocks also, as the rest of the board might have. The horses, in my personal opinion, there's no excuse for not having a fence that is secure if you have an animal. That's just my opinion. I would also wonder if the campground could be addressed. And maybe it can't be, but I would just ask the question if it could be, because it might change the flavor if the campground is out and the kennel is in. That's all I have. Is there anything further from this board? Commissioner Blaine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and once again, I remember the discussion and the CUP with the issue with the campground. Once again, that's not part of what we're considering today, and I realize there's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving and shaking going on with this property and with the applicant, but I'm trying to stay within the bounds of what we're considering here, and we've seen the pictures of the fence and the outdoor runway here. Ms. Goldsmith, you'd said that when you were talking about building a structure and your comment along the lines of the timeline, because you're by yourself and you may need time, significant time, to acquire funding and construction of this building. So I have to ask a question. So are you will be the one who will solely be taking care of these animals? Is that correct?
Currently, I am. If I were to increase my numbers eventually, I would be hiring somebody to assist with things. I do have one kid that comes to help now if I need to be gone or that sort of thing. But especially if there's a new building and 20 dogs, I would not be doing that by myself.
So my, my concern is, are there times now, do we have times now where we have dogs harbored at your property there, that there is no physical human there, because you may have to leave to have an appointment or do things during the daytime? So that does exist there currently, correct?
Correct. I do have cameras at home, so I can see the dogs at all time, and I don't leave them outside ever when I leave. They're all confined at the point, like coming in here today. I do actually have a couple of roommates that are at home, and so there's somebody there, but that they come and go as they choose, so I just simply don't leave for long periods of time. And if I were to schedule vacation or whatever, I either would not have dogs at that time and have somebody come stay at the house with mine, or hire somebody to assist with the dogs.
So it's fair to say then that if you leave the premises, then your dogs are then held inside?
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Wincher.
Moving this thing forward, again, the horses, to me, has a big issue here, because we're talking about fencing. And the applicant admitted that cannot keep horses. In my opinion, horses are easier to keep in than dogs. If dogs happen, again, Commissioner, you stated that, they can burrow under. You can have a 10, 20-foot high, but dogs like digging. And I don't know, this is gonna be addressed to Amy with this fencing. Again, what guarantee do we have this fencing is gonna be appropriate to keep these dogs contained, especially if you have up to 20? Again, is it possible, and I've seen dog kennels where they're cemented, like Commissioner, our chair said, because the fact that they can't dig, under that. Or could we put a condition to maybe have the fence dug down? Because if you look at this, it's sitting above the ground, maybe, I don't know, a few inches or whatever, and I don't know, you get chihuahuas or whatever the heck they are, everything. So is that possible to do something like that? And then my last point here is I disagree with this sunset. Again, it may take her a year, 2 years, but what I would like to see, if I decide to vote in affirmative, is maybe extend that out to the end of 25, and if she does not build this building by then that permit is done. She can't come back and wait till 26 or whatever. She would have to come back and reapply for that, because again, she has that time to put the 20 dogs in there, but if the building doesn't go up, then that would be null and void. You can't come back. I guess you can come back. In this case, even if she does put the building up before, she would have to come back and hopefully get the permit again, and hopefully the board at that time would approve that, because she could put $100,000 in a building and they could turn her down. Am I not right on that?
Mr. Chair, the way the, if the conditions that the Planning Commission recommended would go through, if she had the building constructed and operational before August 31st, 2024, she could have up to 20 dogs and be utilizing that building within this permit.
Okay, thanks for that, Claire. So
Yes.
she would not need to come back, because that's sort of the impression I had, that
No, not to stock that building, but that
Right.
gives her a 1-year time frame to get that building up and go up to the full 20 dogs. And until then, she would be limited to 12 because they would be within the home. Regardless, the sunset date of the permit, regardless of where she's at with the building, would be August 31st, 2024. And at that time then, she would need to reapply for the interim use permit and ask for that to look like whatever she's proposing at that time.
and so she could be turned down at that time.
Yes, Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And then you just had a question about fencing,
Yep.
and within the kennel performance standards, this is what the standard we have within the ordinance is outdoor commercial kennel areas shall be fenced. Fencing shall consist of durable materials with a minimum height of 6 feet and shall deter dogs from escaping over, under, or through fence materials. And so that would be, if that is not, what she's got is not adequate, that is a performance standard already in there. If you wanted to have a belt and suspenders approach, you certainly could put a clearer, more prescriptive condition on this particular permit if you like. Otherwise, it would be a judgment call.
And then we could also change the total number, say
Yes.
including personal versus, that would be something, I don't know, you could make that information.
Yes, you can do whatever you feel is necessary.
All right, I got enough information.
Commissioner Lemire.
On the ending date, that's, the reason it is because it's an IUP, and an IUP is a special consideration for land use within a neighborhood per se, whether it's agriculture or rural residential. That's why we have the power to have an end date. What you guys determine that is, that's fine, but I just want to clarify a couple things that were said. I think, I think two people said that we shouldn't be thinking about the horses and all that, and we should not be thinking about the campground, but I disagree wholeheartedly. We have an IUP, we have a public hearing, people come and voice their concerns. Part of their concerns were the other animals she currently owns and not being responsible, keeping them on her property. That can be construed as, she can be responsible to keep additional 12 to 20 dogs on her property. I think it's a fair question to ask, and I think they were legitimate concerns. And Commissioner Blaine also said that we should just be thinking about the dog kennel without thinking about the campground, but I also think that's not the way we should be looking at this, because question 3 says, the use in the opinion of the Planning Commission is reasonable related to the existing land use and the environment. We're gonna have human beings and animals being housed in the same facility that they're used for cooking their food and for using the facilities to go to the restroom. I think that goes against the health, safety, and welfare of Morrison County. Those are my 2 comments, and that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And it's not as if I'm too old to change my mind on things also. There's a lot of conversation that's happened here today, and good conversation. I totally disagree with the end date as it is given here with August 24th. I don't even know that she could have that building built by that time, to be honest with you. Doesn't matter if she could or couldn't, but go on the basis that she couldn't. She has to come back here again, spend the exact same amount of money to come before the board, and, in fact, it could go away. I'm very clear on that. I agree. I have an issue with the date. But given all of the other conversation that there's been, and especially with the CUP with the campground, CUP, right?
Yep.
The CUP and the campground, that's a big one for me. And it wasn't in my mind. It's in my mind today because of exactly what Commissioner Lemire just got done saying. Making this more difficult for me than I had ever thought that it was going to be.
Yeah.
So my question is to the board, is there anything further?
Can I make a couple of suggestions,
Certainly.
Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
If you fellows feel that you're going to move forward with this, because I heard concerns about the applicant's dogs. Miss Amy, can it be a total of 12 dogs, including the applicant's dogs?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we can change that. It could read up to a total of 12 dogs, and that would be not just for the purposes of boarding, but it could just be, that's how many dogs can be on the site at any one time. So yes, that could be amended to that.
And that would take care of my concern.
And then the sunset is bothering others too, and could you put a sunset on the time frame to get the building built? And if she doesn't get the building built, that it remains at 12 dogs?
Well, the way the condition is written now, and I'll circle back because I actually
I
have
mean,
a
that's
question
it.
on that. So, right now, that condition 3 is up to 12 dogs may be kept within the home for boarding. Up to 20 total dogs may be kept on the premises for boarding after the detached kennel facility is operational. So, so my first question is, so really, the construction of the building is what allows her to go up to 20 dogs? So if that building isn't there, she's going to be capped at 12 until that building is operational, not just up, but operational. And so do you want, so I think that addresses what you're getting at or
One of
not?
the neighbors that I talked to said he could live with that saying 12 dogs may be kept within the home for boarding. Up to 20 total dogs may be kept on premises for boarding after the dedicated kennel is operational if it is built by August 31st, 2024.
Okay.
'Cause she, in other words, she'd have forever to build that kennel to go to 20, right? Is it the way it is now?
Correct. It would, the going up to 20 dogs would be contingent on whenever that building, however, she has, because of the
I'm-
sunset
I'll
of the
just-
permit,
I'll just stop.
it goes. But my question is, I'm assuming if you're saying up to 12 total dogs, then if that condition remains with the 20, you would want that to be total 20 dogs to include the personal dogs as well?
Yes. I mean, that's what I heard concerns, because
And I agree
I
with
don't,
that. My
I shouldn't have
question
it.
is for,
I'll just help him.
to hear is, I didn't quite understand this. The applicant still has to come back, even once it's operational and she met all these standards, she would still have to come back to apply for a permit, even if it's
Correct.
operational, to
Continue,
continue.
correct.
And if the board at that time could turn it down,
Correct.
okay.
And so the way this is written now, the interim use permit, regardless of whatever conditions you have on, sunsets on August 31st, 2024. After that time, she will no longer have a permit to operate a kennel and would need to, so if she wants to continue, she would need to come back in and go through the public hearing process, what she just did.
That's kind of why, the way
And
IUPs
that's
are
the
designed.
purpose of an interim use permit, is it gives the county board flexibility to allow people the opportunity to prove themselves, and see how it's going and be able to revisit it and make tweaks, if needed. So that is why the interim use permit exists, because it allows you to consider uses that you maybe wouldn't, just on its face, because it wouldn't meet, and allow that to be.
And to clarify for myself, so if the applicant, in 1 year, dogs are getting out and, there's complaints and all that. Now, would we as the board, whoever, are gonna see that, we know that she's gonna have to come back in front of us, and then we're gonna ask her, you said the dogs would be confined, and now they're not anymore. That would be a reason not to renew, again.
The
just
track
one.
record,
Yeah,
the track record over the last
So
year
the
would
people
be,
would at least have 2 years to see if she can prove herself, basically.
correct.
My question to that is, do not, most of our IUPs, are most of them 15 months long, where the applicant has to come back, pay again, and then the board can say, well, okay, sounds good. In 15 months, we're going to see you again. In 15 months, we're going to see you again. In 15 months, we're going to see you again. None of them work that way.
We have one that you're gonna be seeing in May.
Oh,
That was,
excuse me. There
that
is
was
one.
given a
Yep.
year.
And that was because of other issues
Well,
that came
and
in
that's,
front.
you're looking at each of these on their own merits.
Okay.
And
enough.
whether or not you feel the criteria has been met for a land use right to be given. The grace of an IUP is that even if you think you're maybe on a little shaky ground, I'm not sure how this is gonna go, but we're gonna give you a year to see. And that way you're protecting the rights of the property owner to ask, and also the people that live in that area. It doesn't have to be, the track record I guess, with the planning commission and the county board has been until you no longer own the property.
Yep.
Or until, and that's what that's looked. It doesn't have to be that way.
Okay, very
And
good.
that is your discretion.
Very good. Commissioner Blaine?
So, Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify, in response to Commissioner Lemire's comment before, I want to make sure we understand, when I made the comment about consideration of the horses, other animals, the CUP that's in place, I was making those comments that that's not what's under consideration today, but I certainly, and I think we all need to take into consideration that there is a track record and there are instances in the past, but we are not here to consider whether her, CUP should continue or that which has been decided on in the past. I'm going to go back to my concern with this, which is my question earlier about, is there a secure facility to harbor a dozen dogs, whether you adding a dozen boarded dogs to an existing amount of dogs that are owned or not. And we've seen the pictures of the fence, and now we've had a review about, by our land services officer about what constitutes a secure enclosure or a secure fence. I need to know where the triggers are on this. If there's concerns raised by board members about dogs being able to evade the enclosure by burrowing underneath. Before this permit is granted, does Land Services have the right and/or do they execute that right to make sure that can't happen with this facility? That there is either concrete under the fence to restrict animals from evading by burrowing underneath, or making sure we don't have obstacles in there that create launching pads to jump over the top or things like this. Before we grant a permit and allow somebody to do something, do we have the ability and do we execute the ability to prove that, I guess?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to go back to our feedlot standards as a comparison. So we have performance standards in our ordinance for feedlot standards. And the applicant must show as part of their application that they meet all of those baseline performance standards for consideration of a permit. This is the same. So the applicant must show that they, at the minimum, abide by and comply with the performance standards that are written in here. So on its face, they need to do that and they need to demonstrate that. If you feel the applicant has not demonstrated that they meet, at a minimum, these performance standards, then you would have two choices. Either you could continue this, your decision on this, and give her time to come back and show that she meets those standards. Or you can require, before she goes to the 12 dogs, that there be an inspection from Land Services to verify that, I guess, in Land Services' opinion, that these performance standards have been met. So those would be the options at this point.
Or the other, I'm going to assume that the third option is we would take this on faith and face value that, she would be able
Yes,
to.
that she's aware of the performance standards and will,
And that these animals will not be
Correct.
allowed to evade.
correct.
Thank you.
Which brings up another question, is that the $100,000 shed is built, and it's a wonderful-looking building, and you've got 20 animals on a routine basis. And tomorrow, one of them escapes. And trust me, your neighbors are going to look for that. And they're going to report it. What happens then? Please, Miss Amy, if you would.
Yeah, so if I get a notice
Yep.
that there may be a violation, then of course I'm going to follow up to see if there's merit to that. And so that would be conversation with the applicant, what happened, this is what I've heard. And then that would be, and then the circumstances around that then would be measured against the performance standards and the conditions that would be with this permit. If any of those are in violation, then we handle that like any other violation where there's notice of violation and corrective action that needs to be taken. If I can't compel corrective action, then that's when the county board would get involved, and I'd be bringing the applicant in front of the board for consideration of the viability of the.
So more than anything, it's strike one.
Correct, yes, they're always given,
Yep.
always given an opportunity to correct the issue.
And a month later, strike two, a month later, strike three, and a month later, it's the fourth time. Is it now time to come back to the county board? Just a question.
Yeah, and that is a judgment call
Okay.
on staff
Okay.
to determine when that needs to come in front of you.
Okay, anything further from the board?
One point, Mr. Chair, I just, I know there's been some discussion about the sunset date on this, and I'm going to say, with the reveal of information on how the planning commission came up with that date, and the history of the CUP that's already in place, I'm okay with this, and I'm okay with that alignment of having those dates concurrent, as I interpret that, that we get a good look at, if this was to pass, that we would get a good look at how are all these things that are taking place there, how are they all working together in respect to each other. So that's my last comment, Mr. Chair, in response to dialogue on the sunset date.
Commissioner Casper, it looks like you're just ready to say something.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that Randy's idea be followed through for a condition with the dogs, a total number of 12, including her personal dogs. And when it moves to 20, that would include her personal dogs. So we don't, as you mentioned earlier, all of a sudden we've got 40 dogs crying out over there. I think that would be very reasonable.
Anything further from this board?
One last comment.
Commissioner Wincher.
You brought up, whoever brought up, if a dog gets loose.
Yep.
Before comes back to the board with this sunset, that will hopefully make our applicant, like, you know what, you put this building up and now you have a strike because somebody complained because you let a dog get out, but you're coming to board to get your continuous permit. This would make, you'll really keep them dogs confined, if you understand what I'm saying? Because something could happen while the building is going up, as soon as she's into that building, and a dog could get out, and now the neighbors are gonna complain, but still coming to the board, well, we just had a complaint.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
want to make sure I'm understanding. So, couple of things. That information certainly would be part of the staff report at interim use permit renewal. If you as a board want to be notified of any complaint I've received, that certainly can be arranged. And/or if you want some sort of interim report, just like we have on a couple other facilities where they report to you annually on the status and everything, that could be built in as well.
No, I'm not.
I will ask one further thing of the board. Would we not like to have that building built before she comes back to us one more time? In other words, what I'm suggesting, what happens if that end date was August 31st, 2025? My anticipation, you'll have that building built by 2025. I don't know that you will.
Can I address
Please,
it?
yes.
If I can just address a couple things to.
No, let's talk about the 2025
Oh,
first.
Well, it's kind of related to
Okay.
that. In order to put up the building,
Yep.
I would need a long-term I mean, there's no way I could put up the building without this being a 10-year plan or I mean, I could put it up right away, but I have no guarantee to pay for the building. The piece that's related to that is that, well, somewhat related, I have no problem with my dogs being part of the total numbers. So just so everybody knows. And the CPU piece of that returning, my intention is to switch to dogs, just the dogs. So if this end date were put out where I could afford to put up the building and pay for it, I would have no problem even foregoing the other permit, because I need to have a business at my property to live, basically. And that the campground was just basically so if somebody's staying at my place Airbnb and they have relatives that want to stay at the same place as they are, they would have a place they could also camp there. But I have no intention of having a campground with a bunch of people. So, but I guess I'm just saying the 20 dog limit in the building, unless the sunset date is put out where I can afford to pay for that, is not something I can even start.
If I may.
Please.
I think what she's saying is that she wants a 10-year sunset date to pay for a building, and you don't need that. Because the sunset date, if she gets her permit in the 2 years or whatever it is, then you can stay there as long as, right? As long as you own the property, I guess. Am I right on that?
That's not what it says.
Well, I understand it doesn't say that, but that's what I think she's asking. She wants at least 10 years to have a permit to have the dogs.
Correct. So my understanding is she's asking for a sunset date, like 10 years out. And then that would be when the county board would revisit the renewal of the application. And so I guess it depends on which way the board wants to look at it, is a phased, a phased business plan where start with the 12 dogs and give the year or whatever to see how that's going, and then that would be then when consideration of going up to 20 dogs or however many, with really intensifying the use then to have that separate building. So that's one way you could look at it as well, but it sounds like there is some urgency to build the building.
I'm not sure about urgency, but I either move forward or I don't with that part of it.
Commissioner Blaine.
Mr. Chair and Ms. Kowalczyk, I think you had mentioned earlier the word continuance. And I'm wondering, and I'm gonna wonder out loud now. I think this is appearing to me that we have an applicant who's come in to ask for a permit on something that's contingent on her successfully executing a business plan that doesn't exist yet, or on finance for a business plan that does not exist yet. I think there's also it's been shared by board members with this sunset date that, in bringing people back and forcing them to pay again to have a hearing or reconsideration or whatever for IUP. And so, as I look at this, I wonder, and I have to question out loud if maybe this would be one of those situations where this decision on this could be tabled in the effect to give Ms. Goldsmith time to secure financing to execute building a building that would be necessary to execute her plan to have a kennel as her supportive business out there, especially in her sharing that the CUP was what appears to me to be a transitionary business to be supportive. Is that a possible action the board could take right now?
Mr. Chair.
Advice.
Please, Ms. Amy, go ahead.
So we do have the 60-day rule, and the county does have the ability to kick that decision deadline out 60 days. So the 60-day rule for this is the 31st of March. We can kick that out an additional 60 days for various reasons. So we could do that. That would give an additional 60 days. If the applicant waives her right to a decision within those 60 days, then it could, be continued out longer. So I think it depends on what you want to see within that 60-day extension, or what you would be tasking the applicant with. What other information do you need to make a decision? Because really, you'll continue something if you need more information or some other piece of information that you would be tasking either staff or the applicant with, so we can bring that back to you.
Okay, thank you.
And that being said, those 12 dogs that we're talking about that
Yes.
start this whole game off, those 12 dogs are being housed within the home right now. So those 12 dogs could continue to be 12 dogs. No?
Mr.
Yes?
Chair, you would need to grant her a permit to have 12 dogs. So right now, she is boarding dogs, but she's keeping it under 4. So this business is happening on a very small scale, but in order for her to exceed that, then she would need an IUP.
Awful lot of moving parts. Further from the board. Gentlemen, this is a lot of discussion, and I'm not hearing anything further from the board. I'm going to,
You know what, I'm gonna try to maybe could we put, like Commissioner Blaine, at least do the 60 days? Let us maybe go out and visit her, do something like that?
Absolutely.
And then, is that gonna be a problem with you getting your kennel started for the 12 dogs if we would just kick it out there 60 days?
When does that put us?
So it would be if they took the full 60 days, it would be the end of May.
It'll be a burden, but, I mean, it's not like it couldn't happen. I'll be turning down dogs for boarding as spring comes.
And I'm just one person, you have 4 other
Right,
here
right.
that you have to convince, so.
Commissioner,
I'm currently boarding up to, generally 3 dogs at a time. So I'm coordinating who can come and who can go when. And I've been turning down a significant amount of dogs, which is my my clientele is built up to where they're fighting for positions, so that it was the point of coming in to increase my numbers before spring hit.
Commissioner Blaine?
Well, I was just going to remind Commissioner Wincher of what Ms. Kowalczyk had said in response to my inquiry on a continuance. You know, part of that would be, you know, we'd have to state, you know, what kind of directives we'd want to achieve by continuing this there. And I'm not so sure now that, you know, does kicking this out 60 days necessarily achieve that? But that's in my mind out there too. And you know, Mr. Chair, I think, maybe to help expedite this, I think you're probably looking from this board, whether or not there would be changes to any of the conditions that have been recommended by the Planning Commission and/or additions to the conditions that were outlined by the Planning Commission before this would come for a vote before this board.
Of course, all those options are on the table. Commissioner Casper?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, is it possible that we would vote on whether she can house the 12 dogs at this current meeting, but as Commissioner Blaine has mentioned, to push the conditional, or excuse me, the 60-day interim out to the end of May for her to have the opportunity to approach the bank, and then she would come back before us? Is that a possibility?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
You would need to be granting her an IUP today for the 12 dogs.
Okay.
And then she certainly could, if she gets her financing in order and all that, she could come for a public hearing to amend her IUP, because you would probably be writing that condition 3 to be up to 12 dogs may be kept within the home for boarding, period.
Yes.
And then if she wanted to change that condition, then she'd need to come in for an amendment, which would be the same public hearing process she went through. So she would not be able to operate just for the 12 dogs. You would need to be issuing her something today.
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
So, Ms. Kowalczyk, does that seem reasonable, that that's something we would proceed with?
I think, Mr. Chair, it depends on what your comfort level is with this. I think the Planning Commission really put that into 2 pieces for a reason, to have that gradual increase. I don't think it was known at the hearing right away that the intent for the building to be built was so soon. And so I think it's really what the comfort level of the board is as far as the applicant and the applicants showing that she meets the criteria for issuance of the permit and what limits on that permit would need to be.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, just at this point, Amy, also, would there be additional fees with that amendment process?
Yes, it would be the same.
So it'd be
Yes.
back through, and then procedurally, what I think we've got is a motion by Commissioner Lemire, and a second by Commissioner Wincher, as stated on the brief description. So in listening, there would need to be an amendment to that motion if there is a change, as well as if the motion is tabled, it requires 2/3 of the vote to take it back off the table. So just procedurally, these are some other things that are out there.
Or a condition could be added.
A condition can be added, and I can give you the dates of board meetings between now and the 60-day mark. In about the 30-day mark, there's a board meeting scheduled for April 11th.
So I would look to Carmen and I would say, Carmen, what would happen if number 3 said up to 12 dogs, period, up to 12 dogs, period, may be kept within the home for boarding? 12 total dogs. Let me rephrase that. Up to 12 total dogs may be kept within the home for boarding, period. Give yourself that time to do your banking, whatever that might be. And I'm talking out loud is all I'm doing. 60 days, you come back to this board and say, secured my loan, my building's gonna be constructed whenever, and once that building is constructed, you're coming back. And again, folks, I'm just talking out loud. You're coming back here, and you're saying, my building's constructed, it's done, it's ready. I would like to move on to 20 total dogs that can be kept on the premises for boarding after the detached kennel facility is operational, which it is. Also giving you time for, I'm sorry, but your outdoor run, whatever that might be. And if I sound kind of crude about dogs digging underneath the fence, I'm telling you, dogs dig underneath the fence. I happen to know you know that. What would that sound like to you? I'm just asking the question.
I think most of that sounds fine, other than, I can't go to get finance. I mean, if you want, maybe I should ask Amy some. So if you issued the permit and approved the 12 dogs for what I currently have, and I just forego the 20 for the time being, at what point can I come back and ask for that amendment or amend that?
Anytime,
Anytime.
correct.
Because I would need the approval for 20 dogs prior to building. I couldn't build without being able to increase my dog number.
But you're not set up for 20 dogs
No,
right
no,
now.
no, I mean, I would.
I get it.
Correct, yes.
Yep, I get it.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yep.
what I'm hearing is that in order to go to the bank,
Yep.
to get the loan, she's gotta say, I've got a permit in place so I can bankroll this, so they go together. The building's not gonna go up until the permitting reflects
And then there just needs to be
that.
conditions that are going to keep it that way, which might sound juvenile for conditions, but without conditions, we don't go anywhere with that. And I'm not sure how this board would list conditions or if they're interested in that. So I look to the board.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw this out. I'm kinda gonna take our applicant, let's eliminate that 20. Let's do what Commissioner Lemire suggested. We put that permit in there for the total of dogs. And hopefully, if at some point that she wants to have, to build your new facility, that she could go to the bank and the bank will say, you bet, you can have the loan providing you get the permit. At that time, she knows she's got the loan ready. All she needs is the approval of the board. I'm hoping maybe that would work, because otherwise, I mean, we're beating this up to death here. So,
Absolutely.
you know, and then I would extend out her, she's gonna have to come back regardless, whether we would approve it the way it is, correct?
Correct.
So I'd like to extend it out to 2025, the end of 2025. Give her plenty of time to figure out her loan and all that, but put the dog thing in there, and then her end date would be August of 2025 or whatever. That's my proposal.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
just wanna make sure I'm clear. So what you're proposing is, condition 3 would be up to 12 dogs may be kept on the
Total, I want
premises.
that
Yep,
total,
up
so
to, yep,
personal and all.
up to a total of 12 dogs may be
Yep.
kept on the premises at any one time, period. And then, 4, then the interim use permit shall sunset on August 31st,
And
2025.
we'd remove the 20 with the building and all that, because
Yes,
she's
and.
gonna have to come to the board regardless
And
if we
then-
would approve it the way it is.
And then in the meantime, if she wanted to increase numbers or build the
Yep.
building, she would need to come to amend either the current IUP or at the sunset of that one, come in and propose that at that time.
And that's where I think is the best bet for for myself, you know, so. that's
Took an
what I-
awful long way to get there.
Yep.
But I think we could be there. Anything further from the board?
I would make a motion for that amendment.
Well, we have a motion on the table. But
Okay, I would amend that motion to include what Ms. Kowalczyk has just read to us.
Okay. And then I would look to see if there's a second for that.
So, Mr. Chair, I think the motion was on the conditions, and so Amy
Was
would
to
restate
approve the permit.
with conditions. So if you restate the conditions, and then the motion would be set and seconded. So before there's a new motion, we gotta
Withdraw my
settle.
motion.
That makes it
You can
easier,
withdraw
because
your
I
Okay.
apologize, you didn't make the motion, Commissioner Lemire made the motion.
But I'm withdrawing my motion and he's withdrawing.
Okay.
And that withdrawal is fine. And then Commissioner Casper, are you making a new motion?
Yes, I would make a motion to accept what Amy has done to amend what we originally had brought forth to the committee.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to read
I would.
those? All right, so the 4 conditions then would be, number 1, outside exercise of the dog shall occur between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. Number 2, the outside exercise area for the dogs must be fenced. 3, up to a total of 12 dogs may be kept on the premises at any one time. And 4, the interim use permit shall sunset on August 31st, 2025.
You good with that?
Yes, I would agree with that.
I'll second.
Discussion? And I have a discussion item. When we talk about that fence, which, forgive me that I'm beating it up some more, but we have that in our, in,
Performance standards.
Performance
yes.
standard.
And also here.
so, but they're totally different. Performance standards and what is stated are different. It simply says must be fenced. Doesn't say, as the performance standard dictates.
The performance standard has a little more design requirements
Yep.
for that, and they both apply.
Okay, that's all I needed. That's all I needed.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
Thank you. So then at the end of the day, the reason she's here and getting an IUP is because our ordinances for the county state that no one can have more than 5 dogs on their premises. Correct? Because I'm trying to figure
Yeah.
out at the end of the day, so what are you getting for your time?
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
we define kennel, you can have as many personal dogs as you want, but if you hold 4 or more for the purpose of, and I don't have the definition, but it for income or for
Profit or personal
profit or
gain.
personal gain, that's when you move into needing a kennel. So she could have 14 of her own dogs, as long as she's not breeding them and selling them and all of that. It's only when the purpose of having those dogs is for financial gain. So a boarding facility rises to that.
Okay.
Anything further from the board? Gentlemen, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, let's do a roll call. Commissioner Casper?
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine?
Nay.
Commissioner Lemire?
No.
Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
And myself, Commissioner Jelinski. I have to vote nay. This motion failed.
Right, so Mr. Chair? So the motion failed to approve the permit, so unless you want to engage in any other dialogue for any other conditions that would change that, then that's where we're at.
Correct. And I don't know that if there are other conditions that somebody wants to jump up with a different motion, I don't know. Hearing none. Excuse me.
Mr. Chair, I'll throw out there. I'll make a motion to approve the conditions that were laid out with the change to the sunset back to the recommended sunset date by the Planning Commission.
Everything with the wording that has gone through.
In other words, will, the motion I would propose is to grant her the ability to harbor 12 dogs.
Yep.
For personal gain.
Yep.
But the review on this IUP would come at the same time and would come at the same time as the CUP that was previously granted, rather than kicking this out to 2025.
And I just want to confirm one more time that CUP with the camping, I can't remember, but that renewal date is August 31st, 2024.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
There is no
there is
sunset
no-
date on a CUP. However, she has 2 years from the date of issuance to commence the use. And 2 days, in that was August 9th, 2024.
Okay.
And so if that use has not been established by then, that conditional use permit becomes null and void.
Okay, very good, understood,
Now, I'm
totally.
gonna throw this out there with Commissioner Blaine, I'm fine, okay, but I wanna clarify this for the applicant. So then she's gonna have to come back on the 24th of August.
Prior to the 31st of August 2024,
Right,
correct?
so she's gonna have to be, regardless if she has the financing available for a new building, okay?
Yep.
Correct.
So then she does that, 6 months later, a year later, she's gonna have to come back again if she gets the financing for the building. So she would have to basically apply 3 times to get additional $20.
It depends on what she asks for at her renewal.
Okay, yeah, okay. All right.
Bring up the 20 at that time.
That's correct.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I feel it necessary to explain my reason for bringing this back up
okay,
and the renewal date, or the sunset date, bringing that back up to what was recommended by the planning commission.
Please.
Is in reference to previous activities and/or instances that have occurred there, plus the consideration for possibly having this campground and all of that. There's too many for me, there's too many things happening, or the potential for too many things happening that affect each other, that I want a shorter window of time to have the opportunity to take a look.
okay, we've had an awful lot of discussion, we have a motion, we don't have a second.
I would second that motion.
Got a motion and a second, is there further discussion? Further discussion from this board?
Do we know the conditions as laid out, Mr. Chair?
They would be the same as they are right here, except for the change for the end date, that IUP date. Am I not on the right page?
Yes, that's correct. That's my understanding.
That-
The 20 is out.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
It would be the
The
2024.
ones that Amy laid out.
The 20 dogs are gone, yeah.
Correct. Up to 12 dogs, and then the sunset would be August 31st, 2024.
Correct. Okay, do we have a second?
Bobby did.
Bobby seconded. Okay, we've got a motion, a second. Further discussion. This is a pretty long one today. Hearing none. We'll do a roll call again. Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire?
No.
Commissioner Blaine?
No.
Commissioner Jelinski is a no. Commissioner Casper?
Aye.
Okay, that motion fails. And that's that. Sorry about that, but that's the way it is.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, let's take a
Okay.
Yes. We'll take a 5-minute break, 6-minute break,
Commissioner Blaine, I
7-minute
thought you
break.
would vote aye, being you
We're back on the air. Land Services.
All right. Item number 2.
Thank you.
I've got Rob with me, our feedlot officer. This is the time of year where we ask for you to sign the annual report, the feedlot report for our delegated feedlot program with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, but we also like to take this time to just give you a recap of the feedlot program activities that occurred in 2022. So the form that was in your packet changed slightly, so Rob will point out those things and then just answer any questions you have and just give you a little bit of a recap of what he's been up to.
Thank you. Rob, you're on the air.
On there, okay. So I'm Rob Wall, County Feedlot Officer. I guess we'll go through this form, kind of give you a general recap. The 2020 registration numbers, which ended, are the 612, are what we basically were funded on, our delegation agreement. And as of 2020, so those numbers stay for the 2021, 2022, then we'll be funded on the 534 active feedlots. There was a downsize of that size, which I would say is not. Mr. Chair?
While you're at this section,
Yeah.
what does base mean?
Base, so basically that is what we have total in the county, is what.
And then what does current mean then?
So base is what we're funded on. That's what I'm kind of
Okay.
explaining, sorry.
Okay,
So
no, that's all right.
612
It was my bad.
It's 2018 through 2020, basically, or so.
Okay.
with
So
registration.
essentially, the base is what we were working off of, and current is our updated numbers that our funding moving
Gotcha.
forward will be based
So
on.
next year, that's why you said next year will be
So
530.
Yes,
basically, they're
that's
2
correct.
years sort of behind our numbers.
Thank you,
That's
Rob.
how
Appreciate
works.
that. Now I
Yep.
can,
Yep. So basically, to explain that is we're working off the 612 is for the inspections for 2022.
yep.
Next year will be the lower number of the 534. So on the base, basically our 7% of inspections was a number of 43 feedlots to be inspected, or is expected as our delegation agreement. A total of 58 were inspected in 2022. And there's kind of a breakdown of, so there's 2 in shoreland, there's a total of 10 inspections were in shoreland, but basically that number is in the 10 to 49 animal units. Also, there's, so I believe it's like 7 were into the 50 to 299 animal units are in shoreland, and 1 over 300 was in shoreland, which is fine. It's just that's how it kind of spreads out. And basically, I have been doing a full compliance inspection on the inspections instead of a desktop review. Is basically just they submit all their records for the nitrogen and phosphorus, and I just look at that one item. And I've been doing it at a full feedlot inspection, so on the ground, and they give me the records.
Great.
And that coincides with our inspection plan. We've approached our inspection program much like a quintile for the assessor's office. So we've laid that out to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. But it's not a quintile, it's a 10-year plan. So in order for one feedlot officer to physically inspect and physically be on every feedlot site, we've got it on a 10-year rotation, because we've got some feedlots that have never been inspected, and so that coincides with that full inspection is happening to meet that goal that we've laid out in our plan.
So Rob, when you do an inspection, you're going to Farm X, doesn't make any difference.
Yep.
You're looking at the whole picture,
Yep.
right?
Yep, so it starts as I'm looking at barns, open lots, and there's a whole list, there's
Yep.
probably about 12 items.
Yep.
And go through it with the producer. I make an appointment with them so they can, come out there when they're gonna be home. I usually do that over the phone, because everybody's,
Yep.
most part I can find a cell phone or a number. And that seems to work better than a letter and then kind of cold showing up, whether they read the letter or not.
And in a hypothetical situation, are you talking about, hypothetical, 3 hours, 6 hours,
Oh, no.
2 hours, 8 hours inspection?
Oh, an
that you're
inspection.
On site?
On site, everything from half hour to an hour.
Okay, okay.
Depending on the questions I get asked,
Yep,
so.
yep, okay, very good.
One of the things we've stayed away from, though, Mr. Chair, are poultry barns
Okay.
because of the avian influenza.
Yep.
That has been a directive that we are not going on premise
Yep.
to those out of biosecurity and concern for those facilities. And so that we are continuing to do on the assessing side as well.
Very good.
So, yeah, and for the avian high path influenza, I view that from a public roadway, and I tell the producer that's how I'm gonna do it, and they're fine with that and talking over the phone.
Okay.
About their facility. So,
Excellent.
and it seems like the larger the farm, the more squared away it actually is. So, there's,
Perfect.
industry-wise, they're keeping it where it needs to be. I'm gonna go on that second page, kind of go through this, just a summary. So total feed numbers in the county, the 534, we talked about that. The total number I inspected were 58. The breakdown of feedlot inspections, compliance inspections, feedlots in shoreline were 10. Feedlots with 50 to 299 animal units were 42. The non-CAFOs, which are just basically the state licensed over basically 1,000, or the GAP sites over 800, like dairy cows, were 15. And the compliance inspections completed on sites under the 299 animal units were 44. Compliance inspections completed on sites greater than 300 animal units, 15. So it's kind of some repeat there. So no sites were found to be non-compliant due to pollution violations. Number of sites inspected with 100 animal units found non-compliant with nitrogen and phosphorus record-keeping requirements was 14. So basically, of the sites that have to keep records, I found that 14 were keeping records and 14 were not, or not up to speed. So what I did is they're basically conditionally non-compliant. I gave them this past fall and spring to test manure, to get their field maps out, get all the records I require. And I've left that on site and also sent a letter to all the non-compliance in February this is what I need, and recap that of like being a feedlot in the county and in the state, these are the requirements of running your business. So,
In most non-compliance is record keeping. I mean, that's very common. I think every year with feedlot operations, the biggest point of non-compliance is adequate or proper record keeping. So we do have some pollution issues sometimes, but record keeping by far is our biggest issue.
What I see on the ground is people are they want to run their operation to the best of their abilities, and I see that, and they're proud of it. It's the accounting part of it, and it's like, sometimes you're taking them by surprise, but not really. It's just that, I look at it like income taxes. Do you have an accountant do that for you? What we want is the county and the state, from training I've received, is they basically want them to know what they're doing on their fields, where that manure goes. It's not, so I tell people, sometimes the large consultant that shows you, here's the document you need for my reports in the county, but if you have no knowledge of what that is, that's not exactly where a state wants to go. They want to have knowledge in the producer, in the person, to say like, this is why I do it. So it makes sense, and it's a lot of it education-wise, and I think they like that approach of kind of giving them the opportunity to, I guess, not fail, just basically, this is what I need to correct, and I didn't know I had to do that, so.
And that's one of the reasons why we have a local program. That there's that interaction on that local level instead of directly with the state. And so it's by design for Morrison County. That's how we want it. We want those teachable moments.
Well, and the bottom line is that it works.
Yes.
Yeah.
It works having someone local that they can put a face to versus someone from, let's just say, the metro, if you will, that they're going to see that face one time. They have an opportunity to see your face, Rob, many more than once. They might only see it one time.
Yep.
But they have the opportunity much more than that. So I agree. That's why we have local control.
And so I'll just go with the last couple sentences here. So then, feedlots were inspected, we're required to do planning and construction. So due to construction, we're 9, and the permitting, 2 replacements of fire damaged barns, 1 replacement of a barn due to storm damage, 1 building addition for additional housing, like addition to it was a freestyle dairy barn, and then 5 were solid manure stacking slabs, which require, it's basically the construction short form for the large chicken barns. They received funding They usually typically wait numerous years to get funding, and they received some funding last year, and so we had 5 put in. And that's about, so basically I'm on track to, so the inspections I did this past year were in Elmdale and Tillman townships. So on a 10-year program, I'm trying to get, so this year's about, I think, 4 townships. There's some that are on our northwest corner, are extremely light, there's maybe 2 feedlots, and then we're, kind of centralized in that central region of the county is where we actually have most of our feedlot activity.
Sure.
So I had my annual review with basically my supervisor with the state, with MPCA, and that's going well. They require the signature and from you, and they actually don't require it, but they will post it on our website. I went to 94 credits, so a lot of them are online, so they were impressed with that amount of credits for the past year. I just feel like I've completed about 2 years here, and getting up to speed so I can talk to people and be knowledgeable is my goal, so I don't look like the new guy.
You're not the new guy anymore,
Not
buddy.
the new guy anymore, so that's what my goal was, so that's why, and I have a lot of the trainings from the state. And let's see. And that's, so basically, we've been doing our outreach is basically kind of an individual basis, at the counter, at people, when they have questions, we try to provide an answer, in a quick fashion, and get them all the things they need. There's a lot of steps with, the county ordinance, but also the state rules in 7020.
Well, Rob, I'd like to have you stop in here at least once a year. You're
Okay.
welcome anytime, and Amy certainly knows that you can come along with her anytime.
Okay.
Because you do a great service to the farm community. Without a doubt, you do a great service.
Thank you.
And to me, personally, when you can stop on a farm site, have a conversation, whether it's 5 minutes or 1 hour, or longer, or shorter, whatever it might be, with any one of our farmers throughout the county, to be able to say, hey, this is who I am. I'm not the big bad wolf. I'm just here to do what needs to be done. And they all know, I get it. So I'm very happy that you're here today to give your report in front of the board. Does the board have any questions?
One, Mr. Chair.
Please, go ahead.
So part of your feedlot inspections and that, you list on there manure management documentation and that.
Yep.
So are you the individual on the county, at the county level, who's responsible for the oversight and record keeping for all of the manure management within Morrison County, for manure produced in Morrison County, and where that's going and how much is being applied? Is that you, or is that go to the state of Minnesota, the Department of Ag, PCA, whatever?
So I'll break that down in like kind of 3 steps. So if they're not a feedlot that's basically under 50 animal units, there's really no record keeping. But I am for everything from a feedlot to all the way to like 1,000 animal units, unless it's the GAP sites, which are the state, so the one that comes to mind, GAP meaning I have 800 milking dairy cows at 1.4, they're Holstein dairy cows, and I have like 800 of them. Then that's a GAP site the state oversees. So everything over 1,000, and I think on here we have like 30 farms that are over that 1,000 animal unit threshold. That basically my supervisor, which is Courtney Frank she's from the Baxter office of Minnesota Pollution Control, she would oversee all those manure management plans in those farms.
Those are direct submittals to the MPCA, because at that point, MPCA has jurisdiction. So those submittals are sent to the MPCA on that annual basis. However, our local permitting, when they get that initial conditional use permit, they do need to be submitting to us on a local level what their manure management plan, because that is a local requirement that they're submitting that at permitting time. So we do get a look at those larger sites and their manure management plan at that time.
So, and I know that, in the past, we've had, livestock operations that have looked to expand. They've looked to expand from tier X to tier X, which means that their operation's going to produce more manure. Yes, they may already be in that size range where that interaction is with the Pollution Control Agency. I get questions from constituents about the transparency and the accountability of that record keeping and you know, the legitimacy of having acres to apply manure to, and acres that have not been claimed by other producers or things like that. We have that ability to garner that information from pollution control prior to and/or in that process when the planning commission is considering permitting requests.
It'd be a direct submittal to us at that point because it is a performance standard. If they're moving tiers or if they're expanding where they're triggering the need for a public hearing, those are direct submittals to us for the local permitting. We also map all of the manure, all of the claimed fields. So we take those, when those manure management plans come in, we take those and we map them. So then we know if there is any overlap in the field claim for one producer over another.
With Pollution Control Agency.
Well, that's internal. I would.
Yep, that's an internal.
So, and that would prompt a question, right? So you have the overlap is like, well, and what happens in the kind of in real life is, well, I agreed to take, you know, for 5-10 years, I'm gonna take this guy's chicken manure. So people will say, I never really got the chicken manure because he never had enough. Because he's farmed it out to 3 places, right? Maybe somebody's willing to pay more. And then that overlap, it prompts the question, so that's why we map it. And we're, you know, as we go, we're getting a more and more complete map, basically, of all the plans I get. Then I put that on our map of the county in the fields. But, like, say I wanted liquid dairy manure, and I put that on there, and so it prompts the question. Just because it overlaps doesn't mean I'm over in my nitrogen or phosphorus levels, so that's what I'm monitoring. But it's basically who's putting it there this year, and, you know, what the rotation is. So it prompts the question to get into their manure management plan and say, you know, like, so I have this plan, I have corn, and I've put on this much commercial fertilizer, this much chicken manure, and then that doesn't receive anything. It's in soybeans the next year. Soybeans don't usually take nitrogen. Then I'll put corn this next year, and I have liquid manure from this source or this pig manure. So it's just a spot in time, which it's kind of a bear to get into the manure management plan in the state's system, but once you kind of have it figured out, it's actually very beneficial. So that kind of answers your question. And I could always ask like my supervisor on those large sites, I don't know if that's the complaints, the real large sites that are kind of state controlled, they issue their permit, and then I would have access if I asked them and said, hey, I have a complaint that they're over applying, then I could dig into that route.
Well, and I'm not saying that there's complaints out there, but I think the question has been asked before that when we had this discussion, I think a little bit in there when we looked at issues with changing the ordinances and that. Is there a point in time where we say, because we have this much tillable ag land within the county that could accept manure, is there a limit to the amount of livestock that could be housed in Morrison County? Or then does it require records to show that we have to export manure out of the county because we don't have the ground to support that. And I think that's where that question comes into play, is there tracking availability out there, whether it's by the county or by the state of Minnesota, that says, you know, these sections of ground in the county are already being claimed by this producer to accommodate for manure management of their feedlot. And so they're not eligible to be claimed by another producer. So we do, you know, in that concern by other producers or by those who have concerns about protecting things like groundwater or environmental concerns out there, that we do have sufficient ability to track where all the manure is going.
Yes, Mr. Chair, over the years, we have been building that. And so every year, as we get updated manure management plans, claiming fields and field agreements, then that map is constantly being updated. So we when high nitrates were really put on the map, that's really when we knew that we needed to be tracking that a little bit more effectively. And so we've been mapping, oh gosh, probably 6-7 years now. And so it's a work in progress. But as far as for transparency, I would say, you know, we do have the mapping tool. We do require those manure management plans, and we do review those and double check those fields to see if they're being claimed. And if there is some sort of overlap, we're asking that question of the field owner and or the producers that have identified that same field, what exactly is happening.
And so I'm gonna assume the same action or oversight will take place too, as the emphasis on the issue of phosphorus, which
Yes.
continues to grow out there.
Those are the two nutrients
Will
that we manage
also-
for.
Will
Yes.
also,
Yes.
we will take corrective action, or we will,
Typically, what we're looking for is if a field tests high in phosphorus, then we're looking for a phosphorus reduction plan to accompany the manure management plan. And if there isn't, we're asking for it. So we are watching
Okay.
that as well.
that's what I wanted to understand. Yes, thank you.
So basically, in the state rules, or if they're over like 150 parts per million phosphate, then they're supposed to stop use of that field for manure, taking manure for a period of time. That could be several years until the test's lower, because the crops always use it, but they use it at like basically a 7-to-1 ratio with nitrogen at 7 parts and 1 part phosphorus. That's why we see that
Yep.
build. And
Balance,
we've had,
yeah.
you know, you could theoretically say there's been generations of land that has manure, and as the small, has received it, and then you have, as small dairies and things close, then you have places where they haven't seen manure in 30 years.
Yep.
So we have, and nobody has all your liquid manure, they try to be as local as possible because of diesel and if you're going to diesel cost. I think it's been a benefit, not for the producers, but that commercial fertilizer's gone, the price has gone skyrocketed. So now it's good for my job because they value it as not a waste product, but it's money laying on the ground there. So they want to use it properly, and for the most part, that's why I see they are, and their crop managers, agronomists and stuff are helping them do that. But kind of one of my selling points is you don't go to the car dealership and say, well, that truck is $200,000. You'd go shop around. You'd be like, that's not exactly what I want. You'd say that can't be that price, right? Well, if an agronomist or some place is selling you commercial fertilizer and they are discrediting that you use manure, just as if the guy that has never, the fields have never received manure in 30 years. He's buying the same total, and people understand that. They're like, oh, I should know that myself, so I'm not getting taken advantage of. It's
Yep.
like, exactly.
Yep.
Also, one of the things that we look at, nutrient value of manure has changed because of the barn cleanout regimes have changed, especially in the poultry industry.
Yeah.
So that is something that has changed. The volume of manure coming out of those isn't as great, but it's a little more concentrated sometimes, depends on how it's managed. So those are things that we always need to be aware of as well, because some of those things are much different than they were even just a few years ago.
Yep. Yep.
Anything more on manure?
Couldn't talk
Fertilizer.
more about it.
Cattle,
Feedlots.
feedlots.
Thanks, Rob.
All right,
Rob, thank you very kindly. Stop by any time.
Yes, take care.
And Amy, I think you have one more
I
item yet.
do. Now I'm gonna have Jean come up.
Good morning, Jean.
We always like to hear about tax.
Yes, this is our, yeah, this is our favoritist time of year, to get the, as you know, the tax statements will be going out, but then also the tax value, the valuation notices are going out too, letting them know what we've got for value. So, as always, before those get sent out, we like to have Jean kind of give you an idea of what's going on and what we're seeing, so then you have an opportunity to have a little education once those statements come out and have a feel for kind of what the housing market is doing. So,
Your turn, Jean.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
So, as you all know, that the estimated market value is driven by sales in our area. Last year came before you with some pretty big increases on both residential and agricultural property. So I just want to kind of review the sale process with you as what I look at, what we go through in order to come up with those values. So the sale process on that is we have from October 1st of 2021 through September 30th of 2022. That is a mandated time frame when all the qualified sales are compiled and studied to determine if any market changes need to be for the 23 assessment payable in 24. So in order to be a qualified sale, it's between a willing buyer and a willing seller and acting in their best interest. So anything other than those sales are removed from the study. The sales are grouped into similar property types, use classifications, and individual townships and cities. Within that area, the median sales ratio must be between 90 and 105. We're supposed to value property at 100%, but the state will allow us that 90 to 105 because they know that every sale doesn't sell at 100%. To figure out that sales ratio, you take the estimated market value and you divide it by the sale price, and you remove any personal property, finance adjustments, and time trends. Those time trends are provided by the Department of Revenue. And that moves the sale to January 2nd of 2023. The ratios are arrayed from high to low, and that middle or median ratio must fall between 90 and 105. And if it does not, then we're required to adjust those, either increase or decrease. So the sales this year, we had 21 qualified agricultural bare land sales. Our sales were at 62.07. The median indicates that the market value needed to increase, and after that increase was reflected, a median of 93.42. So you can see right there from the agricultural bare land, that's going to be your tillable land, that is going to see a really large increase throughout the county this year. We had 12 rural vacant land sales with a 60.79 median ratio. That indicates that our market needs to increase as well. And after the adjustments, our median ratio was at 93.3. Bare land, tillable land and rural preserve land or non-productive land, looks like they're pretty much selling for about the same percentage. So then we look at agricultural bare land and improved lands together. We had 34 qualified sales for that. And at 75.52, that median ratio indicates that our market value needed to increase, and after the adjustment, the new median is 93.33. We also had a large tract adjustment that we've utilized because large tracts in the past have not sold as strong as smaller tracts. This year we had a few large tracts sell, and those sold for significantly higher than what we had them valued at. So some of the area that had those large tracts will see an even larger increase because of that. Any property that is enrolled in Green Acres Rural Preserve will see a benefit. This is the second year in a row they will see a benefit for the 23 pay 24. We had 311 qualified residential and seasonal sales. That we had a ratio of 81.98, and that market needed to increase as well, and our new ratio is at 92.5. The necessary changes to comply with the Department of Revenue, there was about 11% of the county that will see a 10% increase. 15% will see a 15% increase. 37 will see a 20% increase. 14% will see a 25% increase. 17% will see a 30% increase. 2% will see a 35% increase, and 4% will see a 40 or above increase. The townships and cities that are strongest in the sales that are increasing over 30% are Belle Prairie, Caldrum, Elmdale, Hillman, Lakin, Mount Morris, Pulaski, Ripley, Scandia Valley, and Motley City. Again, looking at these sales, not everyone in the county, this is an average. An average is very difficult because you have a large group that's going to fit into the middle, but then you're going to have some that are going to reach extremes on one side or the other. And so when it says 40 and you get a phone call that said my property went up 60%, that probably did happen.
These are general terms, and everyone's individual circumstance might be just a little bit different, but you know that.
We did have some commercial sales. We had 12 of them that qualified, and our median ratio is 56%. We had apartments and mini storage that came in selling extremely high. So the commercial will be increasing as well. The tax statements will be going out with the valuation notice, like Amy said. Those should be sent out the end of March. They need to be sent out by the 31st. So depending upon when the outsourcer can have that put together and sent out. So it could be a few days earlier than that as well. We will be running an article again in the paper just to let people know what's out there, what the sales, what's happening with the increases, and just kind of an informational thing, because if you're not looking at selling or buying property, you might not realize what the market is doing. Questions?
Commissioner Lemire.
Yeah, I have two questions. When the county board makes its levy, right?
Correct.
Some individuals think that when we increase their valuations, that it's a backdoor increase in spending. Could you explain that how it works for us, please, for the listening viewers?
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's really two different issues. Everyone comes up with their levies, and that's what they need. That's what they need to operate. We come up with the market value, which is what we need to fall into, our median ratios need to fall into. And that's really following the market. That's just doing what the sales are indicating. Once the levies are set, then the market values, the total market values and the levies are divided and it comes up with a rate. And that's kind of the individual property owner's piece of pie that they will be, the amount that they will be paying on. The county, the school districts, the township cities, they make no more money. They receive no more money if the valuations are high. They receive no more money if the values decrease. We've had scenarios where values have actually decreased and their taxes went up.
And sometimes, Jean, that's depending on the amount of new construction that comes online.
There's new constructions, there's classifications. Each classification also has a different tax, a different way of taxing. So if you lose a business in town, that's gonna affect how it's distributed. If you've got a new business in town, that's gonna distribute differently as well. So there's a lot of moving parts that go into that tax. It's not a simple calculation, but.
And then if I may, Mr. Chair?
Please.
And the numbers that we get are between willing sellers and willing buyers.
Correct.
And then you take that divided by what we're already assessing their
Correct.
values at. And we need to be within 90% and 105. And what if we don't move them numbers in between them numbers? What happens?
If we don't move that number, if there's qualified sales within that township or city, and I don't move that, then the Department of Revenue will come in and they will just do a blanket increase.
Thank you. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask,
Please.
in reference to large tracts, what constitutes a large tract that you said we had two large tracts that had an impact there?
Correct. So previously, they just hadn't sold. If you've got 320 acres, it's not gonna sell like a 40 acre or an 80 acre piece. So we have an adjustment. The adjustment in the past has been 25%. That will be down to about 12%. We also have one on anything that's larger than 640 acres. That was at 50%, is now coming down to 25%. We're still low on those, but when you're looking at an overall like that and such a large increase, I'm looking for more sales. We probably had 3 within the county that's indicating, and over the past 5 years, I'll look at that as well. So those will be coming down, and if it continues the way it has been, there may not be a large adjustment within a couple of years.
Good question.
Further questions, concerns from the board? Always nice to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. It's always good to be here. And again, just a reminder that anyone that has property owners that call you, feel free to, give me a call, discuss individual, because like I said, a lot of this depends on individual characteristics of their home, their land. So feel free to call and
Absolutely.
contact us or send
If I
them our
may,
way.
they can't change it now, but when the next truth in taxation, then that's when they can come to the township first.
No, what happens now is those valuations come out. On the back of those valuations, you're gonna receive a date and a time for your local board, and that's when you need to address any concerns. After that local board is heard, we can no longer make changes to those. The only thing is tax court in that case. And anyone that does appear to the local board is able to, if they haven't gotten their, what they feel is what is acceptable, they can come to the county board. So
The
there's-
local board is what, November, October?
No, those are
spring.
held the second and third week in April.
Okay, there.
And then the county board is, I believe, in June.
And the date of their individual board meeting is on that notice, so we do
Just to
give
put that out there,
Yes,
so.
absolutely,
Yes.
because a lot of people don't realize that, they get the tax statement, and then they look at the tax statement, that's what it is, but they don't look at that.
They look at that
valuation
bottom
notice.
line, they don't care
Yes,
about anything
this is-
else.
Exactly.
This is not a bill, you don't look at that as thoroughly as you do with your bills.
Appreciate
so,
that explanation.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, this year, getting our valuation notices out was extremely challenging because we're in the throes of a new software conversion, and I wanted to let you know that the leadership that Jean provided, that staff, through this was unbelievable. Unwavering support and knowledge and very much advocating for the staff in this. And so I just wanted to let you know that it has not gone unnoticed, and we sincerely appreciate what Jean has done, because it's been a hard few months. So,
Thanks, Gene.
Excellent. Always good to hear that.
Thank you, Amy.
All right, thank you.
that's all I have.
All right.
Thank you very, very kindly.
That's all.
That's all, that's it.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, you as well.
You bet.
Meeting adjourned? Oh.
How about, no, Tony's coming. Tony.
He's been sitting there patiently.
Didn't Amy?
Tony, thanks for coming.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for waiting.
Well, I think Amy and Jean were remiss to not notice that, number one, today is Pi Day
That's right.
for you residential nerds out there, also International Mathematics Day.
Oh, wow.
Excellent.
Now you know.
I'm glad you let me know that one.
So if you need to celebrate, over at Public Works, we are having pie. Although
Excellent.
The guys might have already had it at break. I've got one item for you today, gentlemen. We're going to be reviewing our Public Works Building Addition. Last week with Pete Filippi with Integrity, we reviewed a lot of those numbers. We'll go through them again today, and then we'll be making some recommendations. So Matt, if you'll scroll through our document here. So as we discussed last week at planning, we had our Public Works Building bid opening on the 2nd of March. And we had a lot of interest, over 54 bidders interested in our project. It was bid in on 16 categories. So I'm just gonna go through our low bidders here. Category 2 was building demolition. Kim and Dirt Diggers at $99,000 was the low bid on that. Category 3 was our earthwork and utilities. Kim and Dirt Diggers was also the low bid on that at $354,000.
Tony, can I stop you?
Yes,
Just for a
sir.
second? You have, on the top, it's bid section, I would guess, add, base bid. What, most everybody is 1, 2. What, can you tell me what that means? Under add.
Oh, add stands for addendum.
Okay.
So through our bidding process, from the time this project was advertised to the time it was let, there were 2 addendums issued.
Beautiful.
So the addendum, when they place their bid, they have to acknowledge that they received it, otherwise their bid would not be an official bid.
Okay.
Essentially, they could miss something that'd be pertinent to their bid.
Perfect,
That means they qualified then.
Yes, sir.
For their bid.
Yep.
perfect. Thank you for that. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Good question.
Yeah, so with that, then, we just did our category number 3, Kimmin at $354,000 was low there. Category 4, exterior improvements, Knife River came in at $213,000. Our category 5, concrete, Thompson Concrete of Princeton, Inc. came in at $389,000. Category 6, precast concrete, Moline Concrete Products Company, $600,000. Category 7, structural steel erection, Road and Iron Incorporated, $92,000. Category 8, roofing, Herzog Roofing Incorporated, $265,000. Category 9, standard frames, standard doors, frames, and hardware, Eagle Construction Incorporated, $22,000. Category 10, overhead doors, Central Minnesota Door Service. This category had 2 items. It had a base bid and then an alternate. So their base bid item, $39,000 with an alternate of $15,000. Our category 11, painting, Full Spectrum Finishings Incorporated, $46,000. Our category 12, fire protection, Summit Fire Protection, $58,000. Category 13, mechanical and plumbing, LJ Plumbing and Heating Incorporated, $464,000. Our category 14, HVAC, McDowell Company, $145,000. Our category 15, electrical, communications, and electrical safety and security, Central Minnesota Electric, $171,000. Category 16, steel supply, this is a material-only item, Ben's Structural Fabrication, $476,000. And then our other category allows contractors to bid a combination bid. Essentially, if they're awarded both bids, they would receive both work. So it's a way to potentially have cost savings, or if, say, a contractor only wanted to do the work if they received multiple sections or multiple categories of work. So in this category, actually, Kim Dirt Diggers was our low bid on both categories 2 and 3, but they also submitted it as a combination bid, so we received some additional savings by awarding Kim Dirt Diggers the combined bid of 2 and 3 versus only awarding them, say, category 2. So it's a few $1,000s of savings at the $450,000. Peterson Sheet Metal, they only bid on the combination, so they only wanted the work if they received both category 13 and 14, and they came in at $799,000. Unfortunately for them, category 13 and 14, the low bidders were elsewhere, so we will not be recommending award of that combination bid to Peterson. So a lot of numbers there. And then, last week with Contegrity and with Pete, we went through our overall project budget, so what we saw there was really good interest, really good bidding numbers, and it brought in a savings. So when we inserted those numbers back into our overall budget, we saw that we have a chance to come in underneath, maybe up to $500,000 underneath what we were originally estimating for this whole project to cost. So as we're looking at it right now, we're looking at roughly a project total or project budget at about $4.7 million. And then, as we talked about also last week at planning, there's some other items that we may discuss in the future to potentially bolster some cost savings for the county for items that are going to have to happen at one time or another anyway. So we'll be reviewing those in the future. Those discussion items aren't part of today's resolution or recommendations. Today, we're just focusing on the actual building and some of the items that go with it. Any questions there, gentlemen?
Mr. Chair,
Please.
if you could explain, and I know maybe this is for the viewing out there, let's just take category 11.
Sure.
That's the reason I'm pulling that is because you got quite a few people bid. It's pretty close.
Yep.
Who vets Full Spectrum that they can do the job versus the second one, Tommy? So is it possible, well, you know what, Full Spectrum is the cheapest, but you know what, they maybe are a little gray around the area. Can we go to Tommy or any of these other ones? How does that work?
So in our process, we're going through a low bid process. We did not go out for essentially an RFP requesting qualified contractors prior to the project. Because when you do that, sometimes you exclude potential bidders. In a case like this, when we're building a public workshop here in Morrison County, essentially a community building, we don't want to exclude the Kim Dirt Diggers or, for your example, the full spectrum finishing. So what we do is we require them to have a bond included in their bid, so a bid bond. And what that does is say after we review the bids and we look at Full Spectrum, obviously this is all very tight bidding, so it's apparent that no one missed anything. They're just very competitive. But say we only had two bidders on there, Full Spectrum and then say Don's Painting, where there's almost $100,000 difference between the two. When we look at that and start reviewing, we would call Full Spectrum, and one of the first questions would be, did you miss something? And if they review their bid and they say, no, this is our bid and it's accurate, then we can accept that. But if they say, no, we missed something, well, then the county would end up taking their bond. As part of this contract, any of these items over $175,000, they have a performance bond. So say when we're moving forward with the project, for example, category 3 with earthwork utilities, if Kimmin comes on site and they're not able to perform their portion of the work, the county would have a performance bond. We'd then take that bond and then we'd solicit a different contractor to perform that work. With the items underneath $175,000, there's typically smaller items, for example, the painting, at $46,000. If Full Spectrum comes on site and can't perform, we'll have a pretty good opportunity to find someone else that can do that work and not incur a substantial loss.
Mr. Chair, for me.
Please, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tony, I have to ask the question, as we look at the screen in front of us here with the categories, most of these in the first vertical column have an X after their identification, but some of them there, like right there, it says CC after. And there's a few of those in here. Can you explain what that means?
Unfortunately, I cannot. I can find that answer. Contegrity is the one that put this together, so I'm not sure what their CC stands for, and I'm not comfortable taking a guess to put it on public record.
Okay, and that's fine. I was just curious because it's identified differently in that listing. And I first noticed that within the electrical, where there was, there's a pretty large variance in bid numbers there too, in that. But if you do find that, explanation, maybe you could email us with that, what that means.
Absolutely. Following the meeting today, I'll go talk with Contegrity and confirm what that actually stands for.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please, Commissioner Lemire.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Got a motion on the table. Is there a second? And we have a second. Is there further discussion on the bids?
Before we move further with that, I want to review the actual resolution, because we have a couple additional items outside of just this portion. So outside of our categories 1 through 16, and then the combination there, we're also requesting the board to approve the budget as a whole. So when we look at these 16 categories, that doesn't encompass all the work that will be taking place. That's just the categories that were bid out. So you'll notice on there we have some direct select items if you look at the budget there. So one of the categories is temperature controls, and that's a direct select item. We're using Johnson Controls. That's someone the county already works with. They do the maintenance here at the government center and at the Public Works facility now. So that's someone we're working with directly. We have some other items that we're going to be evaluating. Our fencing and gates, that's not an item that we elected to bid out, so that's something we're getting quotes for. Our seeding, planting, and landscaping, it's a budgetary item. Some of it we're actually probably going to perform in-house with my staff, but we will have to authorize, or I'm asking the board to authorize myself as the Public Works Director to authorize purchasing of trees and whatever, miscellaneous items that we didn't feel like were beneficial to bid out. So that's something else that we're asking for. And then obviously as a project moves along, potentially you could run into some change order items. And, at the Public Works planning session last week, we discussed the contingency budget that's in there. And what Pete mentioned, when we reviewed the dirt work under where that building's gonna go, some of the boring showed potentially maybe some areas that may have something buried, whether it's wood or whatever. I'm requesting the authorization as Public Works Director to be able to move forward with change orders as this project progresses.
So, there's a motion on the table.
Part of my motion, Mr. Chair.
That's what I'm looking for. And there's,
And I'll second that.
okay, we've got a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, this will be a roll call. Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
Wincher?
Aye.
Myself, Commissioner Jelinski, is an aye. Commissioner Blaine?
Aye.
Commissioner Casper?
Aye.
That motion passes. Tony, thank you.
That's all I have for you.
Thanks, Tony.
Good job.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very kindly, Tony.
Construction certificate, that's what it stands for.
Construction certificate.
What it means, I just have to look.
Outstanding. Good job. Construction certificate. All right, we're going to move into administration. We're going to look to our administrator, Mr. Matt LeBlanc.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 items for the board today. The first before you in an RBA. As noted and highlighted today, our Health and Human Services Director, Brad Vold, is departing the county. Last week, we posted the position. We've already started to receive applications. Thus far, we've received 4 applicants applying for the job. It'll close on the 26th of March. But in the meantime, I have asked Katie Knettel to cover as Interim Director of Health and Human Services, and have asked her to initiate her transition with Brad on a proper handoff, and to hold that Interim Director position until the position is hired and filled. So before you today, I'm requesting board support to allow that and allow Ms. Canettle the opportunity to serve as interim director, as well as an out-of-class pay rate to begin today and conclude at 30 days after hire of the successor for that position.
I'd look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll approve appointing Katie Knettle as interim Health and Human Services Director and approve the pay rate change.
Look for a second.
Second it.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Matt.
Just to be a stickler, Mr. Chair, can we do a roll call on that?
Oh, sorry, my fault. Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Lemire.
Aye.
Blaine.
Aye.
Casper. Myself, Commissioner Jelinski. Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry about that, and thank you.
Second item, you may recall, January 24th this past year, I came before the board, or may have been planning, and asked the authority to release our pay equity report, and the board authorized. This past week, I believe it may have been Friday, I'm pleased to announce that we received notification of our compliance from MMB, Minnesota Department of Management and Budget, that Morrison County is in compliance with our pay equity and how we conduct operations. So I just wanted to let you all know we did well past that, and great work by our payroll specialist and our HR staff to get that done. And other than that, Mr. Chair, pending any questions or comments, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Matt. Does anyone have anything further for the administrator?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
With the restructuring of our Health and Human Services, have we moved forward with that? Does that need a motion, or did we just?
So what was and if we need to pull it out, we certainly can. We had a consent agenda item of a grade change for one of our unit leads
that's
from
what I wanted
32 to 34, and that was approved by the board. And then the internal restructure, reorganization is an operational piece and not necessary to come before board.
That's where I read it. Thank you.
And gentlemen, today is March 14th. We have to do schedules, and schedules are going to start on March 19th and go through April 1st. 19th through the 1st. I'm going to start. Anyone want to know I'm going to see the doctor on the 20th? No, I didn't think so. On the 21st at 8:30 in the morning, we have a planning session. And at 10 o'clock or thereabouts, after that planning session, the Employee Breakfast Committee meets. At 6 p.m. that evening, there's a Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meeting. On the 23rd, 12:30 in the afternoon, I have a State Emergency Communications Board meeting that I believe is virtual. On the 28th at 9 o'clock in the morning is County Board. On the 29th at 11 o'clock in the morning, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Executive Committee. And at 1 o'clock, I have the full board meets. After that is new commissioner training, dealing with the Emergency Services Board. That will all be held at the City of St. Cloud, City Hall. On the 30th, I'm driving up to Staples to speak to a driver's ed class. On the 31st, 10 o'clock in the morning, Central Minnesota EMS Joint Powers Board meets, and I'm not positive if that will be virtual or in person. I think it goes both ways, but I'm not positive. At 5 o'clock that same evening on the 31st is Morrison County Public Safety Conference at Camp Ripley at 5 p.m., and I don't know if the board has got invitations for that yet. But if you haven't, contact Emily Loomis at Morrison County Public Health, or Health and Human Services, if you would. And that's going to take care of me for right now. Commissioner Wincher.
All right, above and beyond that, on the 23rd, I have a TCC here in Little Falls at 5:30.
That's in person?
Pardon?
That's in person?
Yep. And on the 24th, I have Soil and Water. Again, that's over at the Morrison County Soil and Water Building, and that's at 8 o'clock. Otherwise, I think I'm all good.
Commissioner Lemire.
I just have one, Tabitha, 22nd, HRA, 9 AM at HRA.
Commissioner Blaine.
23rd, Region 5, Development Commission meeting at 6 o'clock at Sourcewell.
Okay.
Commissioner Jelinski, did you say the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meeting is on 21st?
I did at 6 PM.
Okay, and then Tabitha, if I can ask you, so our board meeting dates for April, we have 4 Tuesdays in April. So will our board meet, assume that our board meets on the 11th and the 25th, and planning sessions on the 4th and the
That's
and the
correct.
18th.
That's correct.
That's correct. All you got?
That's all I got.
Commissioner Casper.
I have a meeting with Northland Reliability Project on the 20th, and also Community Development, Pine County Bank that day. And the only other one is Mississippi Headwaters on the 24th.
Where's the location of Northland?
That's actually at one of the neighbors where that 230 kV line crosses over on
To a resident.
143rd Street. Basically, it's 143rd Street and County Road 23.
Out in the county.
Yes.
That's where it's gonna be. Okay?
And Mr. Chair?
Yep.
One item during that period of time that the board may hear about, in part of our training program with the staff, our License Bureau is going to conduct active shooter, active killer training on the 22nd of March after hours, beginning at 4:30. So it should not impact services, but if you hear of something on that afternoon, there is training set from 4:30 to 6:30.
Excellent. Thank you.
Correct. Don't close your calendar.
Does anyone have anything else that needs to come before this board? If not,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn at 11:58. Is there a second? Got a motion, a second, discussion, hearing none. At 11:59, this meeting is adjourned.